Welcome back, AuthentiKit fans. This is what we're building today. It is a Supermarine Spitfire chassis or landing gear lever, and you can use it with either the Spitfire Mark 9 or the Mark 1A flight controls that I've already released. This is another item that has taken well over 6 months of development, as I'm afraid I just wasn't comfortable releasing it until I got this indicator system working properly, which I'll show you now because it's not completely obvious. In fact, I'd say most of the work went into this tiny component which you can't even see when you're in VR. So let's say we're taking off. The landing gear is down, but this indicator shows idle, as the hydraulics are in a state of idle. Now once I start to lift the landing gear, the hydraulics are traveling up. So that's what the indicator shows. Now at the top, the gears are fully up, which is kind of obvious, but the indicator shows idle again because the hydraulics are in idle. It does the opposite in reverse. If that was a bit quick, don't worry, I'll show it again because I must say I'm rather proud of it. AuthentiKit is a freeware project. We're creating flight controls for a wide range of aircraft with an initial focus on vintage warbirds, followed by vintage and classic general aviation. We're harnessing the power of 3D printing in conjunction with high quality but low cost components like Hall sensors and sealed bearings. All flight controls can be assembled at your kitchen table with no workshop tools, no soldering and no metal work. You can source the parts yourself, or third parties are providing kits of all the hardware as well as 3D printed parts. This quadrant is the last substantial flight control in the AuthentiKit Spitfire range. And like everything else, the designs for the 3D printing, the parts list, and all the information you need to build it are free and available from authentikit.org. And I'll include links in the description below. We have the flight stick, the throttle quadrant, the elevator trim wheel, the rudder trim wheel, the flaps lever, and now this, the chassis lever. We also have slightly different replica controls for the Spitfire Mark 1A, and I will probably bring out a radiator lever for that at some point too. Although I am also moving on to the Mustang P-51D, and we have some Mosquito fighter bomber controls underway too. So remember to subscribe to avoid missing out on all that. So if you want to build this chassis lever, you'll need to 3D print the parts, like this plate from the front of the chassis. I've filled in the white silicone on this, but apart from the white stuff, this just pops off the 3D printer. If you don't have a 3D printer, I have a video on my channel titled Introduction to 3D Printing, which you may find useful. You'll also need a bunch of parts, such as this RJ45 socket, a damper, a sturdy steel bearing, pieces of cork, switches and so on. And I'll include a list of everything you need in the download. Alternatively, I have a recommended supplier, SimKit Supplies, and they offer a ready-made kit of all the parts, a bit like this one where I store my parts. So everything you need in one handy box. My friend Ruben at SimKit Supplies promises to sell the kit cheaper than you can buy the parts yourself, and that the parts are top quality and the right specification for this project. By the time this video is launched, the kit should be available to order, and I believe the price will be around £19 plus post and packing. Which means that if you had your own 3D printer and you could print the parts yourself, this whole thing would cost you no more than about £28. Also, if you don't have a 3D printer, SimKit Supplies can source the printed parts for you. Just check out their website. Okay, so that's enough of the introduction. Let's get started. We have some screws, some plastic parts, we have some components, we have our assembly steps, and we have a wiring diagram, quite a simple wiring diagram. So let's begin with number 1. Step number 1 is to prepare 3 pieces of felt. Now, a new innovation for AuthentiKit here. I got a tip from somebody on YouTube who commented on a previous video and said, why don't you make printed templates rather than have to sort of guess at the shape of things. So we need a piece of felt that is that shape and that shape and that shape, and these are symmetrical, so that's handy because you can put it on the back and take a template and then draw around it with a permanent marker, and that's, there we go, just do that. Okay, there we go, those are the three pieces we need. Cut them out. Okay, there we have our three pieces of felt, just like the template. Now, this particular one we can't put on yet. That needs to be done after we've fitted a plate and then put some screws underneath it, so that we'll come back to. However, this piece here, which is actually that shape in two parts, goes on this sort of banana shape here. Now, I've already put that on, so when you peel them off, they do leave the sticky, so I'm not going to peel that off or make a completely brand new one for the sake of this video. So what I'll do is I will show you, just so you can see how it's done, on this little template that I made up for the sake of the video, that you just peel off the back of this stuff and stick it on like this. There's no great mystery to how it's done. It will readjust because they're kind of flexible, and you might lift it up a bit and put it down a bit, and if it isn't absolutely perfect, that is fine. And that is our little banana shaped thing, just like we have here. Okay, so that is step 1 and step 2 complete. Now let's move on to step 3. Fit the cork disc to the McClick base. Now that is the McClick base, and again I've got a cork disc already stuck on, and I'm not going to take it off and put it on again, but these, you've done this before. This is just the cork disc. It comes with sticky back on it, and you plonk it in the middle. Very simple. That's number 3. Okay, time to do number 4. This is the McClick lever, the two parts of it. You've got the upper and the lower has the hole all the way through it. And they're joined with a micro bearing at the lever end, which is the end that doesn't have the hole in it. So sit it like that on the upper, and then so it's upside down, and then the lower one over it. You can kind of hold it like that, and then we need an 8mm long M2 screw, and that comes in from the bottom and tightens up like this. Okay, and that holds the bearing in. Now it should be able to spin freely, and just to sort of to gauge the tightness, you can see I've tightened it quite firmly. You want it firmly tightened, but you can see that it's causing a gap to open at this end. So it might be just slightly too tightened. If I just back off a little bit, so it's not driving the other side apart. Yeah, that's probably okay. It's not too critical. Shouldn't bind anyway. Right, so that is number 4. Join the McClick lower and upper levers. Right, number 5. Put the second micro bearing into the McClick lever. That's this. Just drop that in there. Okay. And then screw it to the McClick base. This with an M2 by 12mm. So that's this one here. And the way it works is you put it in from the top. Remember, it's upside down. Goes like that. And then if you use the proper PH1 screwdriver, and this screwdriver bit comes with the starter kit, because it just sits much more firmly and securely into the Phillips head if you use the right size of screwdriver bit, and then tighten it in like that. Should be quite a few turns. Okay. Now when you get to the point where it's firmly in, it's too tight straight off. You need to back it off a bit. And the amount you back it off is enough so that that will move freely by itself. Not too much, so that it sort of slop up and down, but that amount of freedom, that's what you're looking for. So that's number 5 done. Right, number 6, fit both the micro switches. That's these switches. They fit like that and like that. Okay, number 7, everybody's favorite, crimping the wires to the pins. So we have 2 black wires, 25 cm long, slightly longer than you strictly need. We might shorten them later, but makes it easier to assemble. So they go down at the bottom there, and then on this, we're doing sort of 7 and 8 together in one here. On the right hand side upper one we have a green wire, and then on yellow on the left hand side upper one. So let's crimp the black one now. So it's a tiny-ish amount, that sort of thing, fingernail just to peel it off, and we'll get one of these little ferrules. We've got 2, slide that on. Lots of light is the trick here. My eyesight's not the best. You can fold it over once you put it on. If you put a little bit more and fold it over, that helps because it stops it sort of flying off. Slide that over. Okay, see that it's over like that. Push it back, push it on a little bit. A little screwdriver helps. Okay, so that's one, and then the other one. And so there we go. I'm just going to fold the end over there, slide that on. Screwdriver can help here just to help you push that on. Okay, that's good. And then you press and crush. So this really is the ideal screwdriver for the pressing and the crushing. You want just a narrow tip on it, and you can crush it down like that, and that sort of anchors everything in. It sort of presses it and holds the pin into the channel quite well, and they give them a gentle tug just to be confident. No, that doesn't look enough. Give that another crush. Gentle tug, there we go, that's better, and that's okay. So that's one side done. I'll do the other side quickly. Okay, those are the wires on the second side. Let me crush, there we go. Give a good crush on those, and then they're good, they're nice and firm. Right, so those are the wires in place. Okay, now we fit the lever cap, that's this, with 4 of these tiny M2 12mm screws, and you tighten that down really quite firmly. Okay, that's number 9 nearly done, but if you note that point on the right hand side of number 9, after you clamp tight, check the lever moves freely, because what is very important is that that lever will freely move. No catching, no sort of sticking at one side. Okay, hopefully moving a little quicker now. We are going to do number 10, which is fit the M-click peg into the large bearing, and both of those into the toothed cap, and then screw down the toothed cap onto the M-click, and you can see that the little slot in the top there, that goes towards the lever, little lever, so it goes like that, with that sort of Mohican haircut kind of thing. And then that clamps down with 3 screws here, and those are 25mm M4 countersunk screws. And now just check for a nice friction. You want to be able to kind of turn it with your fingers. That's pretty good. Now one quick thing before we do number 12, don't forget, put a lid on these, or whatever you do to put those little ferrules out of the way, because they just fly all over the place. Okay, let's do number 12 now. So this toothed cap faces that way with the spiky bits towards the back here. And what we need to do is thread these wires through these channels here. You see there's some channels there? They come out the back. So they should thread through fairly easily. There's quite a bit of space in there. There you go. That's one side. Okay, you shouldn't have too much trouble getting those through, and then let's slot in the tooth cap like that, and we'll pull the wires through in a second. They clamp on, they fit on the back with 3 M4 10mm screws, so that's this type. Okay, and now I'll just pull those wires through and tidy things up a bit. Great. We're up to step 14. We attach the lever extension, this, to the lever with an M5 part threaded screw. So that goes in on this side with the chamfered sort of opening. Goes in like that. And you need an Allen key to tighten that. Now this doesn't need to be crazy tight, just hasn't gone completely flush here, but that is not coming out. Okay, so I've just spent about 2 minutes tightening this up and realised I've got it the wrong way around. This extension arm should be that way up with that little knobbly bit upright on the same level as these. So I'll have to undo it and the right way around. Well, you can see the right way around. And back in again. Right, there we go. This time it's right. Now that is going to fit onto here in a second, but first we're going to joint these wires at the back. Now there's a couple of posts. You can see that there is a post here and a post here, and I'm going to put a couple of M3 flange-headed screws onto these posts. And there's another one. And we're going to joint the black wires on that middle one with another short piece of black wires. So the way to do this is to take off a good old strip there, almost an inch, and same here, loads of that, because we've got plenty to spare here now, and we twist them all together. Get them really well twisted together, and then what I find, if I just fold that wire over that way, you want to kind of clockwise fold, because then you can hold that little sort of shepherd's crook over the screw and then tighten the flange down and get a good secure fixing point. Now I need to introduce an option to you for the other wires, the yellow and the green, because this particular switch, the McClick, will send a signal to your sim, or it can send a signal to your sim to say that you are lowering the gear as one signal or raising the gear as another signal. But to do that you need 2 inputs. Now we're starting to max out the capacity of the universal hub, so I've only allocated 1 input, and I've freed up a couple of inputs for something else. In fact, I've freed it up for a radiator lever, which on the Mark 9 you don't strictly need, but on the Mark 1 you perhaps do need. So that leaves 1 input available with the standard wiring for the gear, which means that we need to merge the up and down into a single pulse, which will then become an on-off toggle. Click once and it switches either from up or down to up. And that's the standard configuration. However, you may wish to use 2 inputs and have the input that you're sending a signal to go up and a signal to go down separately. And if you do that, then you can wire up, you can keep the yellow and the green separate, and you can wire up your RJ45. Both of them have black on the first. I won't put this in fully right now. The first one, which I'm going to do now, you leave a blank, and then we're about to combine the yellow and the green and have a new single combined yellow, and then that will go in the 3rd slot. So just to help make this a little bit clearer for you, this is the configuration for normal. Black goes into the 1st slot. We'll leave a gap. Let's just avoids the possible risk of things sort of crossing over. Then we merge the yellow and the green, and then the yellow combined one goes in the third slot. I'm going to do that now, but I think you can follow what the alternative is if you want to have the yellow and the green as separate inputs. Right, hope that wasn't too complicated. So what we're going to do now, we're going to joint the yellow and the green with an additional yellow, and that kind of works similar to the way we did the black. So let's do that now. And nip it all up. So that shouldn't come loose. Okay, so now we have just two wires at the end, a black and a yellow, and take a modest amount, sort of 5 mil. In quite a few of the controls I've done, it's you really want the smallest amount, because we do worry about the risk that channels next to each other might create a bit of a crossover. We don't need to worry here, we're going to leave the blank. So I actually find that if I put the RJ45 in first, click it in, then it becomes easier to press in your wires. You just hold the black over the channel and click it down. Then we leave a gap, and then we hold the yellow over the third channel and click it down. Let's have a look. Is it fully in? Yep, looks alright. So that's in there. And then what you probably want to do is sort of tuck these wires a little bit out of the way. You may even decide to put a little tie clip in there, just to make sure that they don't come out and snag the lever, the gear lever. But I think they're okay there. That's the wiring done. That's all you need to do with the wiring. So that was number 16. Number 17, it says fit the RJ45, and as I said, I find it easier to clip the RJ in before you attach the wires to it. So now we're going to do number 18. We're going to attach the slider arm, which is this, to the lever. Now the slider arm has a right way up and a wrong way up. The right way up is going to go like that, by the way. So you've got these 4 holes there, 4 holes there, and the right way up is where the slots are uppermost when we screw it down. And we attach it with 4 M4 20mm screws. Okay, that's nice and tight there. So that's done. That's number 18. Number 19, we fit the lever to the McClick with an M4 14mm screw. We need to get this peg in the right place. The flat bit of the peg, if it points that way, that will mesh nicely with the flat bit here. So that should just drop straight on top like that. And then we need a 14mm to clamp that down. Nice and tight. Now you can see what's going on here. So we now already have a working chassis lever, because as we slide and rotate, you can hear the clicks going on, and that would already be sending the right signal to your sim. Okay, moving on, we're up to number 20. Fit the magnet to the back of the case. So, underneath. So what we're getting into now is this intricate little mechanism that added about 6 months to the development time of this project, which is the mechanism that will cause an indicator in here to tell us which way the hydraulics are moving, whether they are moving up or moving down or in an idle state, which is not actually the same thing as whether the gears are up or down or idle. So I'll explain more in a second. So on the back here, we drop a magnet in, and we need to orientate the north pole towards that little dimple. So the trick there is you take your red-blue magnet, which comes with the starter kit. The blue is the south pole, so therefore we know that the north pole is touching it. Trick to this is to take a little screwdriver. Make sure that you don't lose the orientation, pull it away. So now that we know that way on is the north pole, not the top, not underneath, but at the end, and then we just drop it in like that. Okay, and it drops in. And then we want to make sure it stays in. So this little retaining clip goes over, and we press it down like that. And then a flange head M3 screw goes here and holds everything nice and safe. Okay, so that's that bit done. Right, that was the magnet on the back of the case. Now we need to fit the magnet cover. We've done that. Fit the indicator stickers. So there are two ways of marking the up and idle and down state on this indicator. This is the first one, and it's the way I've shown you in a few other videos. There's a recess. You can see an unfilled one. There is a recess in the print where you can press white silicone in and then kind of smear it away and leave the lettering. So that's the way I've done it here. But there's a quicker and easier way, and in fact the problem with that is because you need to leave such a kind of border around it, the lettering ends up being a bit small. But there's another way, and if you buy the kit from AuthentiKit Supplies, you get one of these with it. And that includes some very handy up, down, idle letters, and you need to put these on now. There's some other stickers we can put on at the end, but now's the time to do it, or we won't be able to do it later. So the indicator sitters, so let us start with idle, and we'll peel that off. So there's the idle one. It's very clear where to put it because the lettering's already there, and the trick is to carefully put it well inside the area. Don't have it sticking out and creating a sort of a lip. It should be well inside. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Now these are permanent stickers, which means that after a while they will be well stuck on, but at the moment they can be adjusted a bit and they'll be okay. I think I'll just slide that down a touch. I don't want that catching. What you don't want is an edge of this sort of catching as it rotates, but that should be fine. So that's idle. There we go. Up, idle and down. Fantastic. Okay, number 23, we drop the magnets, that's another magnet, into the indicator. Again, we need to know the north, so there's the blue, that means it's north pointing to it. Use the screwdriver, we know that north is at the end of the screwdriver. And we have the dimple again, see that dimple? So that is where the magnet drops in. Now we have number 24, we drop the indicator cube. Not sure why I called it a cube, it's more of a tower, really. Anyway, that drops in like that. Okay, with the tiny post at the top. And now we fit this indicator into this recess. And the way it goes is this. You see that little knobbly bit? Now what you first need to do, you need to rotate the slider arm so that one of those gaps is, in fact the best way is rotate it all the way down to the bottom. Then you can carefully drop, it flies in of course because the magnets are drawn to each other. You can see that it's just straight in there, and that little slot gives clearance for the little rider arm. Okay, so that's perfectly in place. Fit a micro bearing onto the indicator post. So carefully put your micro bearing in the top there. And it should sit like that. And now we fit the lever plate with 3 M3 6mm screws. And what you need to be doing here carefully is you see that underneath there is a recess and the bearing goes into that recess. So you need to carefully position that. There we go, you can see that it's not riding up, it's slotted in, and we can now get those screws in. So we need M3, no, that's a flange one, M3 countersunk screws. So they go like this. Good. Once that first one's in place, you can relax a little bit now because you're not going to have those magnets flying all over the place. Let's get the second one in, and that is the third one. Okay, now this is the moment of truth, because, let me explain. The hydraulics are in a state of idle. As we raise, it's very satisfying to see that work. As we raise, the hydraulics are travelling up. And as we continue to lift the lever, the hydraulics continue to travel up. There was a slight click there, you didn't hear over my voice, which was the signal being sent to the sim that we are now engaging up chassis, or we're raising the gears. Anyway, we're still going up, and then at the final point where the gear lever is at the full up position, the hydraulics revert to idle, and that is the correct display. And then in the opposite direction it does the opposite. The hydraulics are going down, 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 down they go, and then they're in idle. That is very satisfying. Okay, next one. Fit the felt to the lever plate. So you want to be absolutely sure that your indicator is moving correctly at this point, because once the felt's down and stays down, it doesn't like to come up again. Okay, on it goes. Now just one thing about the operation of this, which is that when you lift this up, if you were to sort of drag it and just drag it like that, you can peel the felt away. But in practice, I find I worried that the felt would peel away, but it's not really working out, because what happens is you grab hold of this thing, you pull it up, you get it clear of the felt, and then you're usually quite clear of the felt as you travel. But be aware, if you did sort of just drag it over, you could start peeling the felt away. But that's going great. Okay, so that's the felt. Okay, number 29, we fit the spring retaining plate, which goes like that, with just the rear M4 8mm round screw. So that's one of these round screws, and that's the rear of the holes for it. So let's put that in place. Okay, let's turn over the page. Now we fit the spring, and we carefully compress. We don't want this flying out and taking an eye out. Carefully compress by holding the plate and tightening the screw. So this is what I mean by that. If you push it forward, and then one screw, there you go, is enough to hold it. And at that point, you can fit the second screw. Okay. And what I would do now is try and get a bit more compression on it, once you know that it's sort of safely in place. So now you've got two screws very securely holding it, so now you've got this action here, so now you can see that what happens is you travel down and that drops in place. So it holds you locked into down, and then you'd lift it up, slide up, and then it locks into up. Okay, that's that one done. The round screws we fit the damper. Now the damper is a relatively new addition to my design, and in fact if I'd finished this design earlier and hadn't pushed through the idle indicator, I probably wouldn't have thought to incorporate a damper, but now dampers are brilliant. They go in everything. So in goes the damper, like that, and we fasten that down with a couple of 8mm long M3 round headed screws. So they go down better with the PH1 screwdriver. And now we have a very nice resistance, this hydraulic resistance of the damper, which seems very appropriate, because at the point of creating that hydraulic resistance we are moving the hydraulics of the Spitfire. Brilliant. Okay, that's the damper fitted, which was number 32. Number 33. It is time to fit the lid. It goes on that way with two M4 8mm round screws. So they go over on the left hand side, and we have two M4 10mm countersunk screws, and they go on the right hand side. So they go over here where the recess is, the countersunk recess is. So I will just get those in. Okay, there we go. Number 34, we fit the rotation lock screw, which is another M4 8mm round, and that goes here. Okay, just goes in like that. And 35, we fit the plate. So here's the plate, and there's the recess for the lock, so that sort of slots over here and ensures that this won't spin, because we're just going to have a single screw in the middle. That's straight off the printer. That's a version I did with silicon, white silicon embedded, but for the video I'll show the version where we put the stickers on. So this locks down with a M4 round headed 12mm screw, okay, like that. Number 36 next, we fit the knob and the spindle. So that's the spindle there, and that goes on here, and that is held with an M4 20mm round screw which goes from underneath. So the way to do this is just hold with your finger the grey of the spindle, stop that spinning as you tighten it up. Get that good and tight. Okay, so it spins freely, and now you can see that you can very nearly there. Okay, just a couple more things to do. We will fit the Visa dovetail. That's the quick release dovetail. It might look as though you can go two different ways, but actually one way will work. It'll be that way, and that's countersunk screws M4 8mm. So let's put those in. Okay, that's the dovetail on very nicely and securely. And then the chassis stickers. So we have the down. You can see I've already peeled this once off, so I'll take it off again now. Your version should look a little prettier than this. It's a little scuffed because I've ripped it off once and put it back on again. That's down, up, and then for the grand finale, chassis. Here it is. Oh, that's a bit off. Let's have that dead center. Beautiful. Oh no, I haven't finished. We have more stickers. Right, getting carried away. We have the control is set to sticker. So let's put that on. So that points at idle here, or whatever its status it's at. And then we have the keep in lower ground. So that's sort of round about here. Yeah, kind of round about. If you think that that's level, and then look across like that, sort of point, really. Sort of. And then the before CO2, that goes on the right hand side, and that is parallel or on the same level as this one, and just fit that on like that. There we go. Yeah, they go on really well. Okay, so the last few steps now in this assembly guide are to do with the mounting system. What you'll need to mount this to your desk is a monitor stand. There are plenty on Amazon. They're all about £25, and the one I recommend is from Allcam, the MDM11SA. It's much stronger than most. You can see that the trick is to mount it upside down to your desk, and we just need to make a couple of modifications to turn it into an AuthentiKit mounting system. So here's the arm that attaches to the pole, and the first thing we're going to do is attach this Visa wedge to it, and that's quite easily done with M4 countersunk screws, and we just need a nut on the back of these. Okay, that's the last one going on, and you can see that there's an up arrow there to make sure you put it the right way around. Okay, so that is the wedge that this dovetail slides onto. Secondly, it is important that you lock down these arms so they don't move where you don't want them to. On the underside of this one, you can see there's a fixing there for an Allen key, and you get an Allen key with the arm. You don't get one with all of the options on Amazon, but with the Allcams they give you an Allen key, and you can clamp that down really quite tightly. And these metal brackets, they do clamp down well, and they form a good grip so that things stay put. However, This piece, I find, this cast metal piece, it just doesn't flex. So even if you clamp really hard on it, you don't really get a good grip. So I've made a thing I call the arm lock. And this is how it works. There's two pieces, there's kind of the lock and then there's this brace bit. So what you do is you undo the Allen key. Okay, so take that off. Now slide on this brace piece first. That goes like that. Then slide on the arm lock and push the brace over the arm lock. And now you can put this unit back, tighten it up. And it won't turn. It's lock solid. I'd make two of those if I was you, because that is very handy as well with the flight stick. You don't get quite the same lateral forces with the flight stick, but it can still move and you still get this issue. You need to really crank on that piece. So I'd make a second one of those, but that works really well. So finally, we plug the chassis lever into our universal hub. We have a dedicated socket for it here, unless you only have the starter version of the universal hub, which only has sockets for the stick, the quadrant and the trim wheels. If that's the case, grab the download for the upgrade kit, which includes the parts needed and the hub wiring for the gear lever and also the cowl and radiator. And that wiring is very easy indeed to do. Well, that concludes this chassis lever video and quite possibly my final Spitfire control, for the Mark 9 at least. Just over 1 year since my first video for the Spitfire flight stick. I feel like I should have some fireworks or a brass band. This next year will be even more productive, as not only will I be releasing Mustang P51 controls, but I'm very keen to get all my development tools into the hands of the shareware developer community. I've got a strong belief that with the standard components and the construction guidelines I've made, that anyone with Blender skills will be able to create their own replica flight controls, which will massively expand the range of AuthentiKit controls available. And that, I think, well, it could be a game changer. Stay tuned, folks.